This is Frankly Speaking Live with your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my guest, David Kanyuk. How you doing this week, David? You haven't run into any storm glass windows, have you?
Not this week. I think that was a once in a lifetime opportunity
One-off
there.
deal.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, again, if you are watching the show and you'd like to join in with your comments or questions for either of us, be sure and call toll-free at 855-244-0077 and call 244-0077 locally if you want to get a hold of us in the city.
Don't be shy, folks.
And don't be shy. We're definitely trying to generate some calls. So I know there's some people out there that's listening. And I know you don't always...
Besides the NSA.
Yes, besides the NSA, and they may give us a call. But if you're listening and you agree with us, be sure and call and tell us that. And if you disagree, be sure and tell us that too. Well, I'm going to start out this week with a something that I dug out of my vault, my archives.
Mysterious.
And it's called Moral Absolute. And it goes something like this. You decide to get drunk today and pop your other, quote, other, in the kisser. Des Moines or Polk County sends out one of their finest to visit. Oh, let's say Officer Tom Van Volley. Tom's a heck of a swell guy, but he's ready in a heartbeat to throw you on the ground and twist your arm like a pretzel and then say you resisted arrest. So you get the ride, the elevator drunk ride, down at the DM police station. You old-timers know that one. But wait. Old brother Van Volley may have popped his woman last night, or heck, may have even held her hostage with a gun to his or her head. Maybe some of his fellow bros on the force knew of his home issues, but, well, that's beside the point. Well, you get hauled before the Honorable Joseph A. Jerkoff at trial. Judge Jerkoff holds your freedom in his hands. Well, let's say you was in contempt of his courtroom and he decides to throw the book at you with the maximum he's allowed. Well, a few years pass by sitting in a prison cell and you have on the tube Dr. Phil. Doc happens to have Judge Jerkoff's two kids on who now say they were molested by the Honorable Jerkoff since early childhood. Judge passed away a few years ago, and maybe it's been revealed Judgy Wudgy's wife, who now receives Jerkoff's pension, knew full well of the closet skeletons, possibly even like in Nick Cage's movie 8mm. The Honorable Jerkoff has funded several snuff films found in his private library that he would show to some of his fellow bench judges during the summer barbecues just for sexual kicks and giggles. Hey, what's a few dead illegal aliens among friends? Well, okay, Mr. Atheist with no moral absolutes. The people in whom this government put in charge with full faith and credit of this society to determine your fate and freedom both deserve punishment more severe than yours. With no dead right or dead wrong, why should I subject myself to their value judgments, considering that secular humanism teaches there's no God, that everything came from nothing, and that a creation theory taught with no basis, and is a creation theories taught with no basis or foundation? Where is my justice? Is there no moral absolutes? There cannot be any justice without God. Without God, there's no ultimate peace or justice.
Very true. The immediate comment that comes to my mind after you read the Frank parable there.
Yes.
The immediate thing that comes to my mind is this is how the darker echelons of government work. They try to get people like the Honorable Judge Jerkoff in power. What was that he had in his hands? Oh, your fate. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Badoonch. No, they try to get people like that in positions of power over you because they are, since they do have that dark side to them, they are more easily able to be controlled.
Well, if there's no God, there's no heaven or hell. I'm putting myself, or you're putting yourself in the hands of someone who is going to die, go to a grave. It's like they never existed, but yet they hold your fate in their hands. And what happens if they're the most despicable character in the planet? What justice is that to you? In other words, let's say O.J. Simpson let's say O.J. Simpson murdered his Nicole Brown Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And he truly got away with it. What justice is there if there is no God?
Well, there's not going to be absolute justice on earth until the return of Jesus. We have to be a nation of laws, though. That's the thing. We have to be a nation of laws, because otherwise then you would have situations where, let's say Ryan, our producer, comes in here, slits my throat, and says, "Hey, I had to do it. God told me to do it." We have no, and he very may well. We have no way, you have no way to verify whether or not God told him to do that.
Right.
But because of the laws that have been established, inspired by God's laws, for the most part, that's what the foundation of our justice system is a foundation on God's laws. We're able to put that to trial and come up with the punishment that would fit that crime.
Well, obviously, our laws are based on the Ten Commandments.
Right.
In our mind. In other words, like gold is supposed to back the monetary systems, which it doesn't anymore, obviously. The Bible, or the Word of God, is what backs all society. It holds up society.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people in all societies had rules and regulations that govern stealing, govern lying, cheating and stealing, etc. But what was new in the covenant between God and his people is this personal relationship with your Savior. That's what the first 4 commandments take into account. Then the next 6 are dealing brother with your brethren, how you're supposed to treat your brethren. So all societies, even atheist societies, want some form of cohesion.
Right, moral hierarchy, I would say.
Moral hierarchy.
Yeah.
They don't want anarchy breaking loose in the streets.
Right.
So, but I come down to the point, if there's no moral absolutes, then why should I subject myself to their rules and regulations if they just change as society changes?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. What would you subject yourself to if there are more? You would suggest yourself to the Luciferian principles of do what thou wilt, which is what Aleister Crowley, who is the self-professed head of the Church of Satan, would preach to his followers. Do as thou wilt is their motto.
Well, ultimately, you know that you and I both believe that God is the ultimate judge. And that he's the foundation for all society.
Right.
And that rules are for our good, boundaries are for our good.
And then when you do have a society that is spinning away from that moral center, then you do have a perversion of those laws.
Exactly.
Then you have a justice system that is spinning out of control and violating your rights.
And that sounds like what we have going on under the Obama administration today.
Exactly. And actually, it was really funny because I was trying to think of, gosh, what am I going to talk about this week? It wasn't really a huge news week, but
Yeah.
So I was kind of brainstorming what I wanted to talk about, and I was thinking, well, maybe I should cover some of these stories about police officers around the country out of control.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're speaking of is the exact condition that's happening today. We have lost our moral center, and now you do have a justice system that is completely out of control. You've got police officers who are running around basically thinking that they're little g gods who have the ultimate power over you. Just this week, if I can jump in with a quick news story, on video, they caught Albuquerque cops opening fire and killing a man. And you know what his crime was? In Albuquerque, New Mexico. This guy was a homeless guy.
Shoplifting.
No, he didn't do anything. He was just camping. They wanted him to come down off of the land where he was camping, and he wasn't moving fast enough. He's just like, well, why do I have to come down? Where does it say that I have to come down? So they said, we don't have time for this, and they shot him. New Mexico police are standing by their decision to shoot and kill 38-year-old homeless man James Boyd, who last Sunday made the ill-fated decision to shack up in the Sandia foothills due east of Albuquerque. Boyd was arguing with police for more than 3 hours last Sunday in the foothills after officers went to talk to him about illegally camping in an open space, which is a huge, huge crime, ladies and gentlemen. But police soon grew weary of attempting to peacefully resolve the issue with the transient, who was approached as he was sleeping and resorted instead to lobbing, and then the police, resorted to lobbing a flashbang grenade and firing a cascade of bullets as the man turned to escape. So they shot him in the back, like a coward in an Old West movie. They shot him in the back, dispatching the supposed threat within a matter of seconds. The Albuquerque Journal reported that the shots came after a confrontation which the man identified as 38-year-old James Boyd tells police he's going to walk down the mountain with them. "Don't change up the agreement," Boyd says. "I'm going to try and walk with you." He tells officers he's not a murderer. Boyd picks up his belongings and appears ready to walk down towards officers, and then an officer fires a flashbang device which disorients Boyd. Boyd appears to pull out knives in both hands because now he's under threat. He has a right to defend himself. And then a police officer with a dog approached him. He made a threatening motion towards the officer. Oh my gosh. And then he started to turn and run away from the police. And then that's when they shot him in cold blood. So that's the type of justice system that you have now because you are losing that moral center in this country.
Well, and now the second little goodie that I dug out of the vault. And this one's a little longer, and it's a kick. I'm gonna post it on my blog here when I have some time. But this describes what I view as what you have devolved to if you're a Democrat in this society. I sat down in about 2006, so it's a little timed by some of the things I mentioned in it, but I sat down at a computer and just penned this out in about 2006. Here it goes. Mm-hmm. If you are a Democrat in this society, you must be in a mentality of victimhood. Individuals cannot be self-reliant, but trapped in self-despair and pity. Personal responsibility is a dirty word in certain circles of this nation. They would have the government be the remedy for all life's injustices, whether natural or self-inflicted. They seek to find remedies and solutions to human failures such as greed, scandal, and corruption, while denying the father or the true source of these failings. Any new or old human shortcoming will almost instantly be labeled as a sickness or a disease, virtually eliminating any personal responsibility to the perpetrator. Choice and freedom is not in their vocabulary or mindset. They do seem to seek remedies to life evils, but they deny the existence of evil. If you believe in God, you do believe to a point that you have been dealt an injustice and that you are a victim of circumstances beyond your control, but also believe that you're part of the solution and part of the blame for your free will and choice. These rules by Democrats are subject, though, to variations due to sex, wealth, etc. You see, what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. If a woman drowns her 5 children in a bathtub, she should be pitied and understood, while if a man takes a gun and kills same 5 children, this must not be tolerated. Women's groups stand silent when a woman severs a man's penis, but would show indignation and outrage if a man was to carve on a woman's breast. Wealth should be punished in their minds, yet the same ones who seek retribution are themselves living in the laps of luxury. Jesse Jackson is the prime example of this phenomenon. These groups are aghast when some animal would be afflicted and think nothing of third trimester abortions. The Democratic Party, as we know it, has been hijacked by the blacks, gays, feminists, environmentalists, and abortionists, the atheists, all of whom are locked up and buried in the victimization mentality. It's pretty hard to be strong on crime when crime must be a disease, unless the said crime is against one of these above-mentioned groups. Then, of course, this is something they see as hate crime. We're coming upon our first break, and I'm about halfway through this article that I wrote back in 2006. So we will pick this up in a few minutes when we come back from break.
All right.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
And we're back with Frankly Speaking Live. I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and my guest, David Kaniuk. And again, if you'd like to join the show, please feel free to call in with your question or comments at area code 855-244-0077, toll free, and locally 244-0077. Just to finish up the last paragraphs of this, what I wrote here back in 2006 about Democrats, I continue to say, I don't know, but I view it all as hate crime. They somehow draw a distinction. The big lie is class warfare, rich and poor, young and old, male and female. They will tell you that they're for the working man. Income risk distribution is their aim, modern-day Robin Hoods. Once upon a time, they may have stood for workers' rights, but this is ancient history. They must instill fear in you and scare you to stay in power. If they're victimized once, they will likely do it again, they will say, unless that is you vote them into office and to fight for you. Like Satan, they pick on the weakest elements of our society, the old, the young, the decrepit. Every 4 years, like clockwork, the bell rings out that grandma will get tossed down the stairs to avoid forking out her entitlement check. Bob Beckel, a noted Democratic strategist, recently described this during the 2004 presidential campaign. Beckel admitted that scaring the elderly was fair game to the point where his own mother would call him to voice her concern. Beckel replied to his mom that not to worry, that it was only the campaign season and that she would receive her check right after the election. This, of course, was a truthfully glib response on Beckel's part, but serves to underscore the point: scorched earth is the Democrats' only policy, and any means will justify an end. Mm-hmm. A perfect example of this was Bill Clinton's ongoing trouble with not knowing when to draw a line when a woman would say no. Now, and other feminist groups sat loudly silent and spoke volumes to the fact that it's okay to rape, oppress, molest, or otherwise harass a woman as long as you are serving their purpose by being pro-choice on abortion. Talk about a means serving an end. Most Americans vote as they say through the pocketbook, but Ronald Reagan, corny as it sounds, had it right for himself, and I would wager many others that they didn't leave the Democratic Party, that the Democratic Party left them. The ideals which formed the party have been discarded in favor of any means to attain power. Strangely enough, they keep losing at the ballot box. Again, remember, this was in 2006. They keep losing at the ballot box, and with a straight face will say they can't even understand why when they've convinced themselves that they're on the side of the people. Well, sorry to say, but as Rush Limbaugh once said, the country's been leaning conservative for 20 years, and that statement was made 10 years ago. Eleanor Clift is one of these breed that refuses to acknowledge the obvious. Watch her squirm with uncomfort as her party continues to lose seats in the House and Senate. Then observe the venom she spews in her defense of the undefensible. She, in her mind, represents the Democrats that have deteriorated what they've deteriorated to, a party with no ideas, intolerant of others, and full of hate and contempt, all of which they boldly accuse the Republicans of being. The sleight of hand effort to conceal the implosion of her parties falling apart as her party's falling apart at the seams is on the McLaughlin group when host John McLaughlin recently referred to Democrats as gutless wonders.
And I think the same thing could be, a lot of the same things could be applied to Republicans just a few years later. I think what the problem is that both sides are trying to replace God with government, making government basically as God. That's called being a statist. The point that I wanted to make, I guess, on that was, well, let me go back to Republicans versus Democrats. I truly believe that at the upper levels, both parties are working towards the same end. It's kind of a facade in the sense that professional wrestling is, where you have Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man, and they're feuding over something, and then and that's what they're doing in the ring. But backstage, they're all buddy-buddy.
Right.
They're going out for a beer and everything afterwards.
Playing you for a sap.
Right. There are a few exceptions to that rule. But at the upper levels, the Democrats, even though they're wearing a blue T-shirt with a D on it, and the Republicans are wearing their red T-shirts with the R on it, but underneath, a lot of these guys at the upper levels are wearing an undershirt with a G on it that stands for globalism. The best analogy that I can make for this is that at the upper levels, the Democratic wing and the Republican wing are just two wings on the same bird of prey. They're both controlled as a part of what's called a false left-right paradigm, kind of switching out the narrative. So that way, as Professor Carroll Quigley put it in his book Tragedy and Hope, and Carroll Quigley was the Georgetown professor that was Bill Clinton's mentor. He wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope where he was talking about, back in the 1960s, how both parties did need to be controlled at the upper levels. So that way you can lay as much blame as possible on one party, throw the bums out every 8 years, but still continue on with the agenda unabated.
Well, I've been a fan in my life of NASCAR auto racing.
Sure.
And there's been often this strategy, particularly in restrictor plate races, which are 4 a year, that a couple of guys will get together and make an agreement amongst themselves. Hey, let's break away from the rest of the saps, and then at the end of the race, we'll race it out among ourselves. Let's keep these other guys out. It's not not a club unless you keep somebody out.
Right.
So in essence, you're viewing government much the same.
That is correct.
There's no room, absolutely, in a two-party system for three parties.
That's right.
So if you want to be a third party, you have to join one of the established parties.
Right, and work within those parties, which is what Ron and Rand Paul have been trying to do for years and years and years. And I'm not sure if I agree entirely with them. I would personally, after seeing how they got the runaround back in the primaries for 2012, I would have said, hey, just break off and form a third party. You can win by doing that. But they wanted to work through and try and change the Republican Party for the better, and it's working in a lot of ways.
In your opinion, where did most of those Ron Paul voters go? Did they just stay home, or did they go out and push the button for Romney?
I think for the most part they stayed home, or they voted for a third party like Gary Johnson. Because really there was no difference between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. There was a slight facade. There is a slight difference in rhetoric. But Mitt Romney is the guy who basically wrote the early version of Obamacare.
Well,
back in Massachusetts when he was the governor.
Sadly, I think if Romney had got the nomination against Obama the first time, I believe he would have beat him. But I think due to the fact that exactly a collision of worlds happened in that Romney had the background of Romney Care and Obama had passed Romney Care in the second term. Mm-hmm. And I saw no distinguishable difference between the two. You're just fighting out which form of nationalized health care is the best.
Right. Which brand of tyranny do you want today? You know? And that's why you haven't really seen too much of a deviation from the policies that George W. Bush had laid down throughout his term, throughout the presidency of Barack Obama. I had the distinction of living in Chicago during the 2008 campaign and being in a theater rat at that point. That's, still a theater rat, but it was being surrounded by people on Obama's home turf who were just, it was like being around a cult of crazed Obama acolytes. And oh my gosh, everything's going to change and everything's going to be different. And don't you see how historic this is going to be? Because he's got a darker skin tone, even though he's mostly white genetically. It's just going to be so much better. And then I would try and tell them, no, he's just going to continue on the same expansion of government that has been going on under the current president.
Well, my basic complaint with the Democratic Party is what they used to be and what they've hijacked, how they've been hijacked and what they've become. The party of victimhood is how I see it now.
Right.
A future date here, we can possibly get into something that I wanted to get into that I saw a couple of weeks ago was a book TV discussion on Thomas Paine and Edmund Burke, the left-right argument, and how that Democrats used to stand for property rights, for rights of the individuals,
right.
rugged individualism, and libertarians probably would have fell more in line with the Democratic Party.
Exactly. That's why, really, if you think about it, if you look throughout history, we who profess to be more conservative, we're really classic liberals. If you really think about it, because we are for individual freedom.
So we have a lot of the population rafting back and forth in between these two parties, and there's not really a home in either party for them.
Right.
Most of the people that want some fiscal sanity want government's hands off your life.
Mm-hmm.
They find a home in the Republican Party at one point,
and then they
switch over to the Democrats.
Exactly.
And it's kind of back and forth.
If you look back, the Democrats back in 2006 were screaming about the same things that the Republicans are screaming about now with surveillance and the encroaching police state and everything. I think it's a problem that Christians have, especially the religious right. They have been kind of co-opted into believing that GOP stands for God's own party, and they'll vote for anybody who's got a Republican T-shirt on, and a lot of people who should be voting for a more libertarian-minded candidate, they'll vote for a Democrat because they've got a Team D T-shirt on. Really, you should be going down and taking a look at each one of those candidates, and there's a very easy litmus test for those candidates, and that is, do they stack up with the Bill of Rights?
Right.
And if they've done anything in their past as a politician that does not agree with that Bill of Rights, don't vote for them. Whether or not they're Democrat or Republican, just don't vote for them.
Well, one thing that we can almost guarantee, and I can guarantee that no matter who they vote in, the same Goldman Sachs executives
right.
end up being nominated for Treasury Secretary or people that are
Exactly.
running our fiscal house.
And man, oh man, if you want to take a look at who really runs the show, there you go. Take a look at Goldman Sachs. Take a look at J.P. Morgan. That's who's really running the show, is the
Well,
money
I was
and
told a
interest.
long time ago that at the time, Alan Greenspan has more to do with how our economy runs than the President of the United States. And sadly, that's true.
Absolutely. It's run by the Federal Reserve, which is a private banking institution, just as private as Wells Fargo is or Bank of America. It's a private bank.
And our newest candidate for that is, what is her
Yellen.
name? Yellen?
Yellen. Old Yellen.
Old Yeller? Janice?
Janet
Janet
Yellen.
Yellen.
Right. So here's the interesting thing. I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but when the president appoints or submits a nomination for the Federal Reserve chairman, he's doing that based off of a list that is presented to him by the Federal Reserve Board.
Sure.
So he's not going out and saying, who's the best person for this job? He's being handed a short list by the board of directors. There could be one name on that list. There could be 4. There could be 100. So he's got to choose off of that pre-approved list. That should tell you who's running the country. And how old is the Federal Reserve? It's only 100 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like this has been here throughout the beginning of this country.
Well, that's the kind of choices you're taught as parents to give your kids. Choice A or choice B. Well, they want
Right.
choice C. Well, that wasn't one of the choices.
Right.
Well, we're on our second break, so we will be back shortly with Frankly Speaking Live. This is your host, Frank Holzhauser, and our guest, David Kaniuk.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
back with Frankly Speaking Live, and I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and David Kaniuk in studio. So you had a couple of things you wanted to hit on.
Always. Well, I guess in keeping with the theme, I think the theme of today's show seems to be government control. Wouldn't
That's
you say?
the theme every week.
That's the theme every week. I don't know, when you were giving the second Frank parable there.
Yeah.
I jotted down some notes about government as God, because we started talking about how the Democrats and Republicans at the upper levels, they're both kind of the same, and they've both been working towards this replacement of moral principles, this replacement of God with government, and that's why you've seen the government over the past 10, 12 years just completely clamping down on liberties and everything, because the narrative right now is that the government is your God. The government's going to take care of you. The government is going to provide your health. The government is going to provide your job. The government's going to take care of every little
Don't
thing
you
for
believe that there's good people that come into the system that feel like they can change it, but they get in and they find out the system.
Absolutely.
The old saying, you dance with the devil. You don't change the devil, but the devil changes you.
That's a good analogy.
We have a candidate running for senator, Mark Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be a pretty slick, well-funded politician. He seems kind of evasive on his answers. Now, he's sitting in a commercial the other day on TV, sitting at a workbench. Now, I understand that he's been a little evasive on a commitment for term limits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's sitting at his workbench, and he's got a calculator that he tosses in his toolbox on the commercial, and one of the first things he says, what's wrong with D.C., is lifetime politicians, career politicians. But yet he won't commit and is evasive on term limits.
Well, he's got to make sure he fixes every problem while he can. And has as much time to do it as possible.
Exactly.
But anyway, getting back to government as God, I just jotted down some notes while you were giving the Frank parable there, just saying when you believe in government as God, then you acquiesce to their total control. This rejection of God does not equate to freedom. When you rely on the government for your freedom instead of the Word of God for your freedom, then you're handing that over to the corrupt individuals like the Honorable Judge Jerkoff that you mentioned in your first parable.
The above mentioned Judge Jerkoff.
Well, right. So you become bonded to this state, which is really in the business of controlling you and keeping you in line by any means necessary, and they get their power off of sucking any free will or freedom that you have. You have to submit to that.
Right.
You have to submit that to the state in order for the state to keep its power. So I guess the point that I want to make is a lot of people in their so-called enlightened states, they want to throw off the old notion of God because they feel that it's more freeing to do so. When in reality, you're just bonding yourself to the will of man, which is not freedom at all, and to sin, which is not freedom at all. It's absolute slavery. Some other things that I was thinking about for this week was kind of coming back to what we were talking about in our abbreviated show last week, which was
connecting dots.
Connecting dots, and what is being constructed is kind of the big thing for me. I saw this story, and this is one that I really wanted to hit and get on out there on the air. Homeland Security exercise targets free Americans against socialist tyranny. This was from March 25th. Leaked Homeland Security documents obtained by InfoWars reveals details of a joint DHS-FEMA national exercise set to take place this week. One of the components of which revolves around an effort to counter online dissent by a fictional group called Free Americans Against Socialist Tyranny. You think that might be based off of the Tea Party? Which is disgruntled at the imposition of martial law after an earthquake in Alaska. The document again underscores the federal government's obsession with characterizing libertarians and conservatives as some kind of extremist radical threat. The document was leaked by an individual affiliated with Stuart Rhodes' Oath Keepers organization and passed on to InfoWars. It is entitled National Exercise Program Capstone Exercise 2014 Scenario Ground Truth. The document is intended for U.S. Department of Homeland Security trusted agents only and is disseminated only on a need-to-know basis. Even the role players involved in the exercise itself are prohibited from seeing the files. The exercise is designed to evaluate readiness in preparation for a catastrophic incident, natural disaster, or major act of terrorism. Some of the scenarios which will be in play during the exercise include a series of earthquakes, tsunamis, and a nuclear weapons incident. And what did Obama say at the big nuclear dissemination conference in, I think it was in Brussels this week? Gee, my biggest fear is a nuclear weapon going off in Manhattan. I'm really afraid of that. Kind of reminds me of what the bondage queen Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, said after those nuclear weapons mysteriously went missing from Dyess Air Force Base during the summer when Obama was trying to push involvement with Syria by any means necessary. Gee, we better go bomb Syria or else a nuclear weapon's going to go off in Charleston Harbor. We got to go do this. Meanwhile, it was leaked out to the independent media that those nuclear weapons were taken off of Dyess Air Force Base and were on their way to South Carolina. So connect those dots, if you will. But this should go as further proof of where the military is right now and what's being planned for you. They are looking at us as the enemy. They're not looking at an outside threat. Homeland Security and everything has been set up to hunt you down. To hunt you down, to hunt each and every one of us down that does not submit to this tyranny. And I'll go ahead and post this to your blog. Okay. I'll post this to your blog in just a little bit. Let's connect the dots to a story a day later. DoD military training to scare the crap out of people in Florida. The Department of Defense is conducting military training in Broward County this week with exercises involving low-flying helicopters that will scare the crap out of people, according to one local reporter. As residents in downtown Fort Lauderdale began reporting low-flying military helicopters last night at around 8 p.m., news reports emerged hours later containing details of a DoD training drill that would be taking place from March 24th through 27th, suggesting that residents were only informed of the exercise after it had already begun. The training drill will take place in locations throughout the country and will be aided by law enforcement. So this has been taking place not just in Florida, but there are all sorts of reports around the country of drills just like this taking place in Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, where you've got these helicopters flying around late at night. And I was listening to a radio program last night, a rebroadcast of a radio program last night, talking about people who were listening in off of the UHF frequencies for these exercises that were going on. And people in those choppers were training. You know, if you were to go outside, hear a chopper, look up in the air, they were looking down and training their gun sights on you, on individual people. They are training the military right now to view American citizens as the enemy.
Well, I've got some relatives that live in Virginia. And I've been told for a couple of years now that there is some mountaintops mysteriously being smoothed off and prisons being built on top of mountains.
Really?
And they would describe these as kind of internment camps.
FEMA camps, yeah.
Much like what we locked up the Japanese during World War II.
Well, there was a bill in the House, I think it was House Resolution 645, I want to say it was, which mandated that each state have no fewer than 8 FEMA camps.
Well, obviously, if the when, not if, but when the mark of the beast comes in and gets instituted in full bore, you've got to have some place to house the dissenters.
That's right. That's right.
And supposedly...
And they're training right now. That's what they're training for, is to hunt down the dissenters.
supposedly, according to some of my relation in Virginia, they've had some friends that's worked on some of these prisons that's being built out there in Virginia on mountaintops. So, as we said last week, 9/11 was something that is probably the result of most of what's going on. Obviously, the invasion, the slow invasion of our freedoms for national security interests.
You had to have that catalyzing event. It worked on so many different levels. It's really hard to sit and describe in the 3 minutes that we have left before we go to break. But when I say 9/11 was an inside job, I'm not saying that everybody in the government was in on this. It was carried out by rogue factions for the purposes of creating justification to slowly erode our freedoms and set up this police state. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It's the analogy, again, I think I alluded to this last week, it's the analogy of how do you cook a frog? You don't throw a frog in a pot of boiling water. He's going to jump out right away, but you put him in some tepid water and slowly keep turning up the heat. And that's what's been done to us. This heat has been slowly turned up and turned up.
I'm not sure that I totally go down that road totally.
Right.
But I think it's a convenient set of circumstances that collided.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the result of it.
Right. And at the very least, you have to say that it was allowed to happen.
Right.
I mean, at the very, I guess I should say at the very best, we allowed it to happen.
Well, we certainly don't want our homeland attacked again. And it would be natural to do everything you can as a citizen to give away some amount of your freedom in an effort to prevent the attack.
You know what? I would rather die in liberty than live in tyranny. Personally, I don't think there's any excuse for us having to go through naked body scanners or be molested by total sexual assault agents. Oh, I'm sorry, TSA agents, which are going to be operating on the streets. They're not going to be limited to airports. They're going to be out.
Well, you have the stop and check in New York, or stop and frisk.
Exactly. So that's that. We're giving up our power to this beast called the state.
Well, we'll come back. This is our final break, and we'll be back here in a little bit with Frankly Speaking Live.
Hypocrites and Kudos coming up.
Yes, Hypocrites and Kudos.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
with Frankly Speaking Live with your host Frank Holzhauser and David Kaniuk. And now we have our segment that we've fondly referred to as Hypocrite of the Week and Kudos of the Week. And I'll start with a story I just heard last night. And so I typed out on Facebook about midnight last night. Well, we've all heard of the hypocrisy of Carl Rowan. If any of you old-timers remember him, he was a writer in the D.C. area that had to shoot an intruder. Jim Webb, the senator, and, of course, Dianne Feinstein, who said that she, if anybody ever came after her, she would be sure and take a few of them out with her. And you've heard of this hypocrisy of these individuals like this when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. But these pale in comparison to California House member Leland Yee. That's Y-E-E. His sole purpose in life, according to him, is to keep law-abiding citizens from exercising their right to own and bear arms. But apparently, in his spare time, this do-gooder has got caught in a arms for sale sting, including many of the assault weapons that he wants to ban you from having. But he owns and trades in them, including shoulder-fired rocket and grenade launchers. Now, some fools will say, where does this stop? Should you own an MX missile? Well, I don't know. If I can afford one, want to own one, that's my right. Again, foolish ones, one day when you're gunless, don't say you weren't warned.
That's right. And that actually, that's one of the conditions of the IMF bailout deal for Ukraine, which was so lovingly liberated by the European Union. But they had to give up their weapons, actually.
Well, yes. I've always known since I was a kid, the first thing that happens when communist countries take over someone is they start confiscating your weapons.
That's right. What was it, Mao, that said political force grows out of the barrel of a gun? Yeah, as long as they have the guns, they've got all the political will. But yeah, this Leland Yee, apparently he had contacts with the Chinese triad and everything. So who was he selling those weapons to? I don't think that's exactly what we've heard.
Well, this is still in the early stages of the investigation, so there's more shoes to fall, as they say.
Yeah, who is sponsoring this guy? What is the story behind him?
I mean, like I said, I just heard about this last night and done a quick post on it, so we will keep our eyes on that story in the weeks to come.
Yeah, best as we can, because they'll probably try to sweep that
Now,
under the
what
rug.
fine candidate do you have for Hypocrite of the Week?
Well, I have a repeat candidate.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Harry Reid has done it again. I was going to talk...
Say it ain't so, dirty Harry.
I think he's going to win the award at the end of the year. I was going to give him the award for his comment that, because of everybody's troubles with logging onto the Obamacare website, which is well documented to have not been a finished website, he said that, people just aren't educated on how to use the internet. But this one that was just published yesterday, this takes the cake. So you remember last month we gave Harry Reid the Hypocrite of the Week award for calling, well, at least we commented on the story about his saying that all of the Obamacare horror stories were just lies funded by the Koch brothers. This week, Harry Reid got on the floor of the Senate and said, I never called Obamacare horror stories lies. Let's see. The Senate's top Democrat attempts to rewrite history 1 month after he said that Obamacare horror stories were lies. Senator Harry Reid now claims that he never said anything of the sort. In a vain attempt to control reality, Reid took to the Senate floor yesterday and completely denied his previous statement that every Obamacare horror story in America was untrue. Mr. President of the Senate, the junior senator from Wyoming, has come to the floor several times recently talking about the fact that examples that he and other Republicans have given dealing with Obamacare, examples that they think are bad, I've called lies, he stated. Mr. President, that is simply untrue. I have never come to the floor to my recollection, and I have never said a word about any of the examples that Republicans have given regarding Obamacare and how they're not very good. Which is patently false. He's on video everywhere, going on the floor of the Senate last month saying that these were all lies, that they were funded by the Koch brothers, that as he put, were trying to take over America. And then it goes on, the story goes on, and I'll go ahead and post this to the website, franklyspeakinglive.com. Let's see here. And Reed is about as power-hungry and corrupt as they come. Yesterday, that would have been March 26th, yesterday it was reported that he gave his granddaughter $17,000 in campaign funds as a, quote, holiday gift, and only admitted to it after intense scrutiny by the Federal Elections Commission. Reed announced that he would reimburse the money, but it's obviously that he's only doing so after being exposed.
And story's over.
That's right.
According
Story's
to Harry
over.
Reid, story's over.
Story's over.
Now, I did hear another interesting note in that story that he made a $300,000 investment in some property and owned it for less than 3 years and made a $700,000 profit on said property.
Wow.
So if you're not a millionaire when you enter the Senate, you're likely to be a multimillionaire when you exit.
Exactly. And studies have shown, as much as the Democrats like to play themselves off as the party of the working man and everything, there are more millionaire Democrats in legislative body than there are Republicans.
They're for the working man's wallet.
By far. Who do you got for applaud of the week?
Well, kudos. A story that I was going to do last week until our electric went out. So I thought I would hold it over till this week, but I found it increasingly harder to find the story this week until I found out why. But not being a person who is immersed in the hip-hop culture, I'll have to say I was fairly ignorant of this particular person.
You like real music.
Yeah, I like actual singing. But kudos to Kid Cudi. Cudi, not sure how to pronounce the name. But rapper Kid Cudi made some comments on the Arsenio Hall show recently worthy of notice. When asked about the state of hip-hop, Cudi opined that the glorification of wealth and promiscuous women is preventing the African American community from progressing in a positive way and holding black folk back. Well, that is until Russell Simmons has chimed in this week. Now, Russ thinks things are just fine. No problem. No problemo. So we'll see if Brother Cudi sticks to his guns, so to speak, now that he's gotten some blowback from his peers.
Well, there you go.
But, like I say, the guy hit it right on the nail head. I mean, it's definitely holding the black community back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny how they like to go after people like that, people who speak the truth like that, and how they've attacked Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Over not buying what they're selling. And then, we got 1 minute left. My kudos of the week goes to independent journalist Dan Bidandi, who went up to a Rhode Island state senator after a news conference, his name was State Senator Josh Miller, who has been trying to grab guns in Rhode Island. He went up to him and basically asked him, "Don't you care about the Second Amendment? What is your justification under the Second Amendment for grabbing guns?" To which the state senator said, "Go F yourself." Seriously. But I just want to applaud Dan Bidandi. He was attacked, especially by MSNBC this week, which has lost another fourth of their viewers. He was attacked mercilessly by MSNBC, but the backlash was so great that the state senator had to delete his Facebook page. I want to give a kudos out to Dan Bidandi. They are trying to take away independent journalists' right to be heard. They're trying to take away their First Amendment rights. People like Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein are trying to determine who can be journalists, and this is why.
Well, this has been Frankly Speaking Live, and I'm your host, Frank Holzhauser, and our guest has been David Kaniuk, and we will resume next week at this same time.
Don't forget, also, we got a website, franklyspeakingliveonline.com.
If you'd like to join the blog, be sure and check it out.